welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Cricket Australia's new General Manager of Team Performance, Pat Howard. You've received his media release, so I don't intend to go through the background or his CV in any great detail now, and I'm sure you'll have some questions for him in a moment. But before handing over to Pat, perhaps for a comment and questions, I'd just like to make some comments myself. As you know, the Australian Team Performance Review that was recently handed down had a series of wide-ranging recommendations, and a number of those included some key appointments, and this is one of those key appointments. It's important to remember that the Australian Team Performance Review was very much about how or what Cricket Australia and Australian cricket needed to do to ensure that Australian cricket was number one in all three formats of the game for both men and women. And that's something that really is at the heart of the process that we're working through right now in terms of making appointments. This appointment today, this announcement today, is a very important first step in that process. There are a number of other steps that will follow from here, and there are a number of things that will fall under Pat's guidance. But as you know, we have a clear focus right now on appointing a new head coach in the revamped role, and a selection panel with a full-time national selector and supporting selectors with that. And we will very quickly work into the pointy end of that process. There's been a lot of work done in that already, but now that Pat's on board, we'll be working very closely with him to finalise some of those appointments. Pat's role will be based in Brisbane, working at the Centre of Excellence, but at the same time he'll be spending a lot of time with the Australian team and those around the Australian team, and also with our state associations. It's a very sharp focus around teams, as I said before, men and women, but also through our junior programs and the pathway and our talent management system to ensure that we are identifying talent and seeing the best possible talent come through as quickly as possible. In terms of Pat himself, his credentials are very, very strong, albeit in a sporting sense in rugby, but I think that it's important to note that he has played at the highest level. He's coached, he's been a selector, he's been a national selector. He knows and understands high performance. He's had a general manager role in high performance as well. But on top of that brings a whole lot of other credentials that we find very attractive. He's a pharmacist by profession originally, and that in itself lends itself to something that's very important in high performance sport now, and that's the sports medical science aspect of performance. And on top of that, he's also more recently had a career in industry, and that's something that as well broadened his offering, I suppose, and makes him a very attractive candidate, and has made him a very attractive candidate. This process in arriving at Pat has been far-reaching and wide. We've had a global search. We've had a number of very, very strong candidates that have been identified in the process, but Pat very quickly moved to the top as our preferred candidate, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be able to introduce him and welcome him to Cricket Australia and Australian cricket. And I'm sure what he has in front of him is certainly some great challenges, but it's certainly going to see Australian cricket on top, exactly where we want to be. Welcome, Pat.
Thanks very much, James. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
Pat, if we could start to make a brief comment, and then we'll take questions and answers.
I'll move over a little bit. Look, obviously, I'm very proud and honoured to get this role. Obviously, this first stepping stone of implementing a lot of the Argus review. Obviously, many of you don't know who I am, which is fine. I'll get to know you over time. But look, I have a great interest in cricket. I love the game. But at the same stage, I do have a high performance background, and hopefully that will be complementary to the coaches, the selectors, the captain, to be able to support them and be able to get us to where the Argus review is giving you a very clear mandate. So I'm very honoured to be in the role. I'm very excited. It doesn't start for a month. I'll have to work with my current employer to that starting date. But in the meantime, I'll be working very closely with James at Cricket Australia to get processes underway to keep moving it forward on the plan that we've got going.
Thanks very much, Pat. And James, could I invite your questions? Given Pat's new to this room, could I ask you to identify yourselves, where you're from, when you ask your question, just so that we know who we're speaking to?
Pat, Ian Cohen from Channel 10. Congratulations, obviously. What do you know about cricket? What did you do growing up?
I played cricket at school, as we all do, and we all love it. But there are anecdotes that I can pull together over time. And look, I love the game. I'm a terrible leg spinner. But look, I love the sport. I love the international nature of it. It's something that appeals to me with rugby and cricket. And for me, that's, you know, I've lived in England. I've been at Grace Road. I actually got to field as a 12th man for Leicestershire County Cricket. Snuck onto the field once. So yeah, look, I love the game. It's fantastic.
And what do you see as the crossover between your union experience, obviously, and...
Yeah, obviously the international nature of it. One of the things about rugby and cricket they do have very similar is that the fortunes of the game and the sport rely heavily on the performance of the national team. Other sports can rely on domestic competition and domestic wins and losses, and cricket and rugby, you know, can't. The Wallabies need to win. The Australian Test team needs to win, and as an Australian public, we don't accept anything less. So that's a great challenge.
Chloe from the Age.
Pat, do you think coming from outside of cricket, from a different sport, in some ways enables you to make the tough decisions that are called for in the Argus report, which talks about accountability?
Well, I guess that there is some sort of, you know, I'm not don't have my feet under the desk quite yet, and but making those calls I think will help. I don't have any baggage. I don't know a lot of the personalities, and I guess I come with a fresh slate. I don't have any preconceived ideas, and that's one of the things that will be an opportunity for me and for Cricket Australia to sort of ask those dumb questions.
Pat, Julian Stu from Fox Sports. What attracted you to this position, and also what do you see as your biggest challenge?
Look, I do love the high performance arena. I love trying to maximise performance out of any athletes and making sure your succession planning is right and getting the best teams. You know, the fact that this is Brisbane based is a rare opportunity to combine those two. I have a youngish family now. When I used to do the role in rugby, they were extremely young. So this is a fantastic opportunity. And when I saw the role come up, I thought, oh, that's extremely lucky that this is in the location it's in a sport I love, with some skill sets that I hope might be appealing to Cricket Australia.
Pat, it's Jesse Hogan from The Age. Based on what the Argus review said virtually the buck's got to stop with you for all team performance matters. Do you think that people like the captain, the coach and the selectors will be comfortable reporting to you, considering you haven't played or had other experience at the highest level of cricket?
I think, you know, leadership and management come in all forms, and you've got to make sure that you understand the group and the group mentality. I've got to get my head around the culture of cricket and the personalities involved. So that's a process that comes in over time. You don't, regardless of what your title is, you've got to earn respect, and that takes time. And I'm not going to be granted anything. You've got to earn that.
Glenn Osborne from SBS. You said before you're coming into this with a fresh mind, having not been involved in cricket before, but from a distance, have you already identified perhaps some strengths and weaknesses in the systems and in the team?
No, not really. Look, I'm still at that process, and you know, we've all gone into new jobs and sat there and gone, geez, we've got to figure out who's who in the zoo. And look, I'm nowhere near that stage. Look, as I said, it's a month till I really start, although I am starting to cop a few phone calls, as you would expect. But look, I want to try and really get some depth in behind it. The Argus Review is a fantastic platform to build from, and being able to sort of dissect that at every level, engaged at every level. I had a quick phone call with Michael Clark earlier, just to introduce myself, nothing more, just to be able to try and engage with the community. So at this stage, you know, it's all perception. You don't want to make preconceived ideas.
That's Tom Brown from 7 News. Just in terms of the search for a new head coach, how are you involved in that process, and where is that at?
It's probably one for you, James. You know, obviously we'd love to get it going, but I'm actually not under the desk yet, so I want to do the right thing by my current employer and make sure that's looked after as well. But
yeah, we're working through a process where we will, in terms of the head coach, we'll be putting something out into the public space in the next couple of days that makes it clear a little bit about the job and what we're looking for. And as I said earlier on, it's important to understand that this is a new revamped role, a head coach role, but we'll be working through a process such that we identify the prospective candidates that we believe will best fit that. And it will be a rigorous process. We want the best person for the job, and it's a new job and it's a different role. And certainly now that Pat is officially coming on board, we can talk more freely with him about that, and he will have his own views about what sort of criteria, credentials we want the head coach to have. And there will obviously be lots of other people that are in that, but we haven't really tightly formed that yet, but that will happen in due course.
Tony Shebeki from SEN. Obviously, cricket's a emotive game out there in the public, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of mates and the like telling you who should be in and who should be out.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think we've all said it, and we all grew up loving cricket, and, when you talk about who's the captain of Australia, there's no question what sport you're talking about. I've actually had this discussion with James the other night. I've got a certain friend that when he finds this out, which he doesn't know about, I expect a few phone calls probably in the next hour. 20 million selectors, isn't that how it is?
Greg Buckle from AFP. We've seen foreign-born coaches in World Rugby. Is that something you think Cricket Australia needs to look at?
Look, I recruited Robbie Deans. I did that job, and that was a fairly unique time. One, it was what was required in the game at the time, and we went through a fairly rigorous process in being able to deal with that. Look, you've got to recruit the best person for the job, and that also factors in things like culture. It factors in where the team is at. And look, you don't take in any preconceived ideas. The big thing for me is not about the names, it's about getting the capabilities that the game needs right now to complement the other people that are there.
I mean, you're coming in cold, but I think under the review you're supposed to have a key role in the selection of the coach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I see myself having a very strong role in that. I have done a lot of coach recruitment. ACT Brumbies, Reds in Queensland, who won the Super 15 this year, and in Australia. So I have a fairly strong history, albeit in another sport, in this. And I'll need, with the support of Cricket Australia and James, we're going to need some technical expertise to help us get through that process.
James, is it more important that Pat is involved in the coach search than actually getting the coach in place at the start of our international summer?
What I've always said, Jesse, as you know, is that the first step is to get the general manager on board and appointed, and then from there the selectors, so the national full-time selector and the selectors that support that chairman and the head coach are our next focus, and we're variously advanced in that. But it's clearly a key focus, and virtually the first thing that will come onto Pat's radar, because I've been dying to have a general manager appointed so that I can share with him where our thinking is up to on that, and we're in a position from today to go forward very quickly with that and roll that out over the next month or so, or whatever it takes, probably over the next couple of months.
Question here.
Sorry about that, Pat. Sarah Ashmore here from 3AW. Do you feel a little bit of pressure coming in at a time and heading up this overhaul that Cricket Australia expect to be kicked from?
Sort of, yes. Obviously you're going to feel pressure in any new role. But I think the opportunity, the fact that Australia's not on top, there is some real upside. I think a mandate for change and growth is not always possible when you're at number one. I think the Argus Review was a really great watershed moment, and I think it presents an opportunity. So, sitting here today, am I nervous? Yes. Will I be nervous and feel some apprehension in terms of being able to deliver? That's pressure. That's accountability. Look, if you're not used to those attributes, you shouldn't be in these sorts of roles. So, it's going to be tough.
James, so the other position obviously is the full-time selector. Is that on track to be filled sooner rather than later as well?
Yeah, well, in a similar sort of way, we're probably more advanced in the national selector role. We advertised a few weeks ago, and so the search consultant recruiter that we've been using has been meeting with various people and has gathered, I guess, a list of names that have been waiting in abeyance for the general manager to be appointed, and now we're at a stage again where we can start talking about that a little bit more freely and start really getting down to a bit more of a short list to identify that. So it's going to be a similar sort of time frame but we're certainly very aware that the summer is approaching, and we want to have someone on board as quickly as possible.
James, about 5 days ago, I think it was Nick Malthouse said he'd be open to the idea of being consultant for cricket. He obviously has a experience. Have you guys spoken to him at all about that, or his management?
No, I haven't spoken to Mick specifically about that, and to be honest, my focus in recent weeks has been very much about getting the general manager appointed. We'll be casting the net as widely as possible, or as we need to be, to I guess implement recommendations out of the Argus review, and they can come in all sorts of different ways. Short term, it's about a head coach and selectors, but beyond that, it's about the Australian cricket teams being better and being number one in the world, whatever it takes.
James, you pointed at Pat, who is outside of the cricket family. Does that sort of show that Cricket Australia are open to the fact that possibly the next coach could also come from that area as well, outside of the cricket family?
I take the view that very much about best man, best person for the job, and I don't think you should in any way limit the horizons, I suppose. You narrow it to cricket, and you narrow it to a pretty small field, but at the same time I wouldn't want to be quoted to say that we might have a coach who's outside of cricket. It's obviously far more likely that that someone from outside of our sport is going to come into a role like this, with, as you can hear and have read, the credentials that Pat brings and the experience he's had and the success he's had, importantly. He's had success coaching and as a player and all of these things, so he knows what that's about, and he brings that in, and I think it brings a whole new dimension to aspects of the game that are perhaps a little bit traditional and hard to change.
How much input do you expect Michael Clark to have in the new coach, and how much weight do you think his advice will have?
I think, with the ability to have, you put a coach in place, he's got to be complementary and work with the captain. You can't have antagonism working from day one. That's never going to work. So the ability to have effectively what is the spine of cricket, being the coach and the captain in this role, and James, it's got to work really well together. So those considerations have absolutely got to be part of how you fit that jigsaw together. And Michael's attributes, skills, strengths have all got to be utilised and complemented with that that decision-making process.
James, you touched on it just a moment ago. The time frame for the new coach, where is that?
Soon. No, well, I mean, we know and understand that that we don't have a coach. We've got Troy Cooley, who's acting in the role at the moment, and we're very aware of that. And what I've always said is that we will step out this process, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We need to get the general manager on board, appointed and on board, and for them involved in the process, because they're the one who is going to have the head coach reporting to them. So that's first step, and understandable. We understand the urgency, but we're not going to compromise the process, because we have to make sure that we go through a rigorous process to identify the best person for the job. This is a big job, it's an important job, it's the head coach, it's a different job to what we have had before, Australian cricket has had before, and we're going to go through a process of finding the best person for that job.
So no end date at this stage?
No, I'm not going to be stuck by giving a date, but we understand the urgency, it's there, it's quite clear. But I don't want to be making any promises there. We're working very, very hard on it.
Pat, I know you said you had another job which you've got to fulfil. Will that prevent you from going over to South Africa with the club?
That'll be a discussion. Look, if possible, I'd love to get over there. But at the moment, I gave notice at work yesterday. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of a listed company, so I've got to go through a process there, proper governance that's required. But look, they're being very good and very accommodating to help. Obviously, it's pretty fresh news for them too. But if I have the opportunity to go, most certainly, I'd like to do that.
Pat, I know you haven't got your feet in under the desk yet, so just with your other hat on, how are the Wallabies going to win on Sunday?
I was waiting for that one. Look, I obviously have got a lot of skin in the game there. Very close with Robbie. I know everybody involved. I'd love to see them win. It's really tough. It's Eden Park in New Zealand, and the amount of times that you win there is rare. I never won there. I won a couple of Bledisloes, but it's a tough place. And but I just think something tells me there's a bit in the water that they're a really good chance.
Ladies and gentlemen, two more questions, please. Greg.
James, what's the story at the moment with selector on duty for South Africa?
Well, as you know, we've got the selection panel continuing in their role. I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is, but Greg Chappell's over there at the moment with the team, and they'll share the duties during the course of the tour. What we've said all along is that they are selectors, and they've agreed to continue in their roles as selectors until such time as others are appointed. We're very grateful for them, particularly Andrew and Jamie, continuing in that role. In the meantime, Greg's obviously a full-time employee here at Cricket Australia, but they've also acknowledged that once we have appointments in place that they will step aside.
One last question, thanks, Craig.
James, as part of the search far and wide, would Cricket Australia gauge Shane Warne's interest in becoming head coach?
We're interested in talking to anyone that has an interest and obviously has the attributes and skills to be a coach. So certainly wouldn't rule Shane Warne out from being someone we'd talk to.